thing is, you know, when somebody plants a tree that's gonna be right in view, not taking 5, 10 years to grow into your view. You know, that's
Okay,
something
our life.
that should be discussed with the neighbors, you know.
Uh-huh.
In our case.
We're on, guys.
Okay.
So welcome to the Wednesday, May 3rd, 2023 City of Rollingwood Comprehensive Residential Code Review Committee meeting. Let's do the roll call first, if you guys want to just go in order. Jeff, why don't you start?
Jeff Marks.
Dave Bench.
And I'm Ryan Clinton.
Duke Garland, here.
Great. I think the first item on the agenda is public comments. Would you like to address the commission? We would love to hear from you. Thank you for coming.
Okay, my name is Ellen Wilson, and I live at 3018 Hatley Drive. And my main concern, if you're already going to be talking about this, then obviously I can't make the comment, but I'm very concerned about the side setbacks and impervious cover. And I don't know what they are now, but I know they're not big, and I know that, you know, the building that's going up next to us is casting a long shadow in the afternoon and continuing. Also, besides the fact that they have been within the 10 feet of the lot line, they've built out more impervious cover with the with concrete, which is obviously permanent, and I think some of it's going to catch rainwater, but the fact is then that's impermeable and that's large, and so I'd like something where once the setbacks are defined, that no impermeable structures could go into that area, you know, because that's just adding to the runoff as far as I can see. You know, and I like the idea of 15 on one side and 10 on the other, but I know now it's a lot less, and I'm not sure what it is. Can you tell me?
It is, it's still that.
It is?
Yeah, it's still that, yeah.
Oh.
Well, what it is it's 10 feet on the side, but between two buildings must be at least 25.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And it's on one lot has to be maximum. It has to be a total of 25. It's not between
Okay.
two.
So
know,
you can't
two,
have 10 feet setbacks?
Well, based on the way the
Looking at
code
each
reads, you could actually. It's
Okay.
per our code. It has to be 25 feet across the lot, and so you can have 15 and 10 on your side, and that doesn't preclude the next door neighbor from having 10 on that side. Currently, the way it's written.
Okay.
But between adjacent buildings, it needs to be a minimum 25 feet.
Well, that'll be good.
That's right.
Okay, I did, you know.
So it could be 12 and 13.
But so, in other words, the building official that okays these plans would know in advance about this and be able to tell them, no, you can't do this, you have to move it back, or
There she is.
here, okay.
I think there's already a vigorous discussion over here over whether or not you could have 10s facing each other and then only 20 feet from each other.
So my understanding is that the fire code requires that there's 25 feet between two adjacent buildings. So if one gets established at 10 feet, then the next door, he's gotta go 15. Not, as an architect, I've had to do that twice recently.
Okay.
So
The issue with that, of course, is that you could get boxed in and therefore have less ability to build on your own lot, which
Right.
seems unfair.
Yes, and I'll just say for our review, for our code, that's not the case, but if that's the fire code, then that's how the fire department is reviewing it, and so that's what's happening if that's the
Yeah, we
the
need to
fire
check
code
that.
rule. Sure, we will.
But so, in that case, if somebody else builds a concrete structure that goes into the setback, you know, that has a 4-foot wall or so, that would not be allowed technically.
Not necessarily, no. There are a
Okay.
number of things that are allowed in the setback.
Okay, I'm
Yeah.
just thinking if there's a fire code, then they can't go through there because there's a 4-foot wall, but hopefully somebody will be thinking about that. The other thing is for the measurable height of the building, I feel that it has to be like from the natural level, not where somebody takes a bulldozer and pushes enough dirt over so that you get 5 more feet, and then it's measured from that. You know, that, to me, that's already adding to the building height. So-
That is the code. From the natural, yes, from the
Oh, it
original, yeah,
is.
that is the code.
Okay, and is there somebody that goes around and makes sure that through every step of the construction, they're meeting what's on their plan, and that's okayed?
Do you want to answer that one?
Yes, that, we do have an inspection process, though, so there's.
Like for the different processes for like when they pour the slab
Mhm.
and,
Right, from building plan submittal all the way to final CO, there are inspections along the way to confirm
and
that
does
they're
somebody
building.
measure the height?
We have that, that's actually a new addition that at the council meeting this week will be, or this next couple weeks, we'll be bringing back to city council, for a building height inspection process, so.
Okay, I don't know, maybe the plans show 40 feet and somebody just okays it anyway, but there's a house on
Right.
Park Hills that's like 4 stories high or something.
Yes, that one actually has been surveyed, so we have, that one's been established, so.
Okay, well, I guess those are my main concerns. Oh, and I understand that in the backyard, you could build a deck all the way to your property line. And I feel that's not fair to the backyard neighbors, because then if you're trying to be outside, they're right up against the property line partying. And if something can be said about how, even like 5 feet or something so they're not right on top of you, I think that would be good. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much for coming. We appreciate it.
Yes.
All right, so next we go to the consent agenda, which is really just the minutes from the past meeting. I read them. I didn't see anything that would need changes. I don't know if anybody else has
I'm-
any concerns over the minutes.
No,
Can we have a motion to approve the minutes?
I move that we approve the minutes as written.
I'll second.
Great. All those in favor?
Aye.
And that's unanimous.
Do I need to roll call in
You
or
might
anything?
as well say who you are.
Alex Robinette.
Thank you, Alex. All right, so the next item, we go to the regular agenda items. In looking at these, it seemed to me that there was at least a little bit of grouping that could be done, and probably some things we want to check off that we had asked to be done before we kind of open it up for a general discussion. And so I think that staff was going to present, I assume that is on item 3, and then also on item 6, which is the common zoning questions, and then the relevant documents, Dropbox, things like that. Do you guys want to speak about that, or is that not right?
Sure, no, that's correct. And our apologies for getting this document to you all late. We emailed an updated document earlier today. The request that came to staff was, you know, we want to know y'all's feedback as well on, you know, some of the common issues that you see. From a staff perspective, you know, we're not weighing in on the policy decisions here. That's something that we'd really like this group, this committee, to kind of come together and review themselves. However, we did reach out to K. Friesen Associates. They do our planning, they do our zoning and drainage reviews, just to ask them about kind of what are some of the things that they hear or see a lot during the review process. So what are things that are commonly causing conflict or confusion, or just it's causing there to be a lot more reviews or a lot more difficulty in the review process. So they listed out some information in a memo here. I didn't know if that was something maybe we'd just want to distribute to you all and maybe talk about at a future meeting, give y'all a chance to kind of read through what they've presented there.
I've read the letter, the updated letter that came, I guess, 2 hours ago, and I'm not sure what's being asked there. I mean, it's just kind of the code, the way that it's written, and what of it? I mean, what are the questions about it? I don't understand.
So there aren't any questions in here. I guess the updated document, what we changed and what we've submitted recently is just, it was brought to our attention that the setback section, the yard and setback section in their memo, did not yet include the updated setback changes that were made about a month ago, and that's because those aren't live on the code yet. Those usually take about a quarter to all update and get into the code. So while they are active and effective, they're not in the code. So when they pulled that information, they used that old version. And so what that effectively means is if you had an application submitted before that was approved, you fall under the old rules.
Right.
And if your application comes in afterwards, the new rules apply to you as far as the zoning rules, the setbacks.
Right.
So that was really the only change that was made to that memo.
But that was, okay, but as I understood it, these are questions that are being asked of
The reviewers.
the reviewers.
So these,
And-
right.
And what are the questions? What's the thing?
So I think they're not so much questions as people, read through all of our codes, they submit their plans, and
Mhm.
it's more like, K-Freeze will have to come back with a letter that says, you didn't address this, this needs to be looked at, you need to take a look at your, fence
They're
to
stumbling
fence.
blocks.
Right.
I found it helpful because it summarizes the Resi code, like the relevant areas that we're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I took from the letter.
Okay.
Right.
It was like a
What-
copy paste of, you don't need to read all of the code, go searching for it. This is actually what I've been asking you guys for. So I found it
Okay.
helpful
Great.
that you sent that.
So
Sure.
I think
and-
it was more intended to be, these are the hot topics. These are the pressure points that we keep on having
Right.
to address. These are some places of confusion in the code.
Mhm.
This is where people are struggling with enforcing the code and maybe complying with the code.
And reviewing, right. And so
Yeah.
from a staff perspective, it's not so much that there's not that we agree or disagree with any of them. It's more, what is causing issues during the review process? What are
Okay.
taking some people, 5 or 6 reviews to get something right? And maybe that's something we want to look at in the code to tighten up or make clearer or simpler.
Do we want to talk about that right now, since we're talking about it?
We're
or-
happy to. We have the memo here. We also thought at some point, we could bring our reviewer in to have that
Mhm.
discussion here at a later point, whatever the committee would like to do. If y'all want to discuss any of the specifics here, we can.
It's on the agenda, so if you want to speak about it, I think you,
I
you-
think
you
that-
absolutely can.
For me, in reviewing some of the plans that we have on file, I found some discrepancies, maybe kind of to your point about reading the grade next to the building. And to me, maybe I'm missing something, but there seems to be some inaccuracies
Mhm.
or even some fudging in some cases. And
Mhm.
so my question is, is that an old review process, or how do we kind of guarantee the accuracy? Because to me, I would describe it as a little bit sloppy, but
Mhm.
again, I could be misinterpreting what I'm seeing.
Sure. So also over the course, I think, I'm not sure, K-Freeze has been our reviewer for the past, 4 years, maybe a
Mhm.
little bit longer. But we've had previous engineering firms that filled that role. I think you solve that or any kind of concerns of that by having a crystal clear code. And when
Mhm.
when there's any room for interpretation or that, well, this could mean this, but it could also be read this way, that's when I think you have
Mhm.
those issues. I can't really speak to any fudging or anything like that.
Well,
that shouldn't be happening.
For
but-
instance, there's a project that has noted the high point and they've noted the low point, and there's not 10 feet of difference,
Mhm.
but they added 10 feet to the 35-foot overall.
Mhm.
And it's really obvious that it,
Yeah.
and so my question is, how do
know
you?
which project you're talking about,
Uh-huh.
and those aren't approved plans.
No, that's not what we're talking about.
Okay.
This is something that's already under construction.
That's already-
Mhm.
okay.
That's another one though, but that one is less so.
Yeah.
But this one,
So did it slip the reviewer?
that's what I think.
Mhm.
And so,
Yeah.
yeah, but
Mhm.
that's a big difference.
Sure.
Well,
I
that's a
mean-
catastrophic mistake for a neighbor, right?
Exactly.
Sure.
Yeah, it's a small thing, and I don't know that it was done with the intent to get ahead. It may well, because it's very clear on the
Right.
drawings.
Mhm.
So I don't. Maybe they just thought, because it's hard to read our rules.
Well, it
but
says the higher up, that's the problem. It
Yeah.
says the greater of, so
Yeah.
somebody could easily read those two things and say, well, I get the greater of, so I
Yeah.
always get the 10 extra feet.
Right. Yeah. Right.
But
But they didn't.
staff should have caught that.
No.
Right. Yeah.
So,
the
at
reviewer
some
should
point.
have caught it.
Yeah, the reviewer should have caught that.
That's an exception that they didn't meet.
Yeah.
Well, I agree
Sure.
that the provision is written incorrectly, but if you want to give meaning to the greater than part and strike out the meaning of the when
It
part.
just means they read past the exception and went straight to the greater.
Yeah.
How many
Mhm.
reviews do these go through? Like in my work, I run a analytics team, and we do a second pair of eye review on everything.
Mhm.
So does this go through second pair of eye?
They go through, I would say probably a quality control of maybe 2 reviewers, but I can't really speak to K-Freeze and their process on that. This is, we contract out those
Yep.
reviews because they're so technical. We don't have the engineering or the, planning in-house skills to do those reviews.
Can we check on that one maybe afterwards?
Yeah,
Could you
circle up with me on that
Sure.
one
and then
afterwards.
Could you
Yeah.
circulate it
Yes.
to us? Because
There's,
maybe
there's probably
maybe the
more
Mon-
than one.
Yeah, I
Well,
mean,
that's-
there's nothing
that's
to be
pretty
done about it
catastrophic.
now, and, and to be fair, it kind of falls under the umbrella of some examples I would use that did a decent job of handling the height, but at the same time,
Mhm.
we don't want to allow that to continue.
Well, and there's almost no point in going through this process if the rules that we come up with through this process are not
Enforced.
enforced in any meaningful way. Yeah.
It seems that the closer we get to today, the more, the greater the desire to extend to the greatest point possible.
Yes.
So the opportunity for mistakes is increasing.
Mhm.
And what I would wonder is K-Freeze being alerted to the possibility that there's gonna be more mistakes, and are they doing what it takes to ensure that their reviews are really,
Yeah,
Mhm.
I agree.
as stringent as they need to be? Because it's really what we're here all about right now. This whole thing, because of what's happened in the last couple of years, we need to be sure that we're enforcing the codes that we have
Mhm.
on the books.
Mhm.
So I'd recommend, like, one of our working groups is focused on enforcement, and that working group can do a controls check with K-Freeze to ask the questions that we have around their process. Understood the city isn't gonna do a re-review, but are they doing that? Can they outline for us what their process is, and then exhibit that that process is being followed?
Sure. That's a great idea.
I mean, we're putting all the attention on K-Freeze, but shouldn't the building height be under the plan review? The building plan review?
That falls under zoning, which is K-Freeze. The building is,
Okay.
I'm not mistaken, right? ATS. Yeah, ATS does all the building, which is more like life safety. Mm-hmm.
Okay. I just
Okay.
have a hard time separating that.
Sure.
I just wanna make it real quick, in the document that y'all sent, as a follow-up, it says, 10 feet for side yards, except that the sum total of 2 side yards of any lot shall not be less than 25 feet.
Right.
Of any one lot is how we, that's how our code reads, which doesn't, to me, doesn't mean between 2 lots. That might be the separate fire code,
Okay.
section. That's why when I read that, I said, well, to me, that sounds like on one lot, you have to have 25. But if there's a separate fire code
Well,
requirement.
I've been told twice, again, to meet the 25 feet between 2 adjacent lots,
Mhm.
that was a fire code issue.
Okay. We'll definitely get with
And
ATS on that.
I've never had.
Yeah, I didn't know that was a fire
Yeah.
code driven.
Hmm?
I always just thought that was a Rowanwood setback requirement based on livability standards. I didn't realize that it was a fire code.
Neither did I. So you can't have 2 10-foot side
Correct.
setbacks
On a,
Yeah.
adjacent?
I mean, clearly, the city of Austin doesn't have anything like
But
that.
what you read didn't include the word adjacent. I don't believe what you just read to us included the word adjacent.
Mm-hmm.
That's right.
so the,
It did not.
so the side yard of each lot shall have a minimum width of 10 feet when the lot abuts another lot, except that the sum total of the 2 side yards of any lot shall not be less than 25 feet. So I
Yeah,
read
that's
that
one
on
way.
your
Interpret the
lot,
way Ashley
Yeah.
it
was
has to be
explaining it.
25.
Absolutely.
And so, but I've seen that, I've heard always, no, it's between 2 homes. And I'm like, well, our code says in one lot. And so
Yeah.
if that's a separate fire code, then that needs to be enforced in that process, in the fire inspection process, review process.
I think it's important to establish whether it is or is not fire code,
Mm-hmm.
because so many of the notes that we get have to do with don't cut back the setbacks.
Mm-hmm.
Don't reduce the setbacks. there's rumors out there that we may be thinking about something like that.
Are you really meaning increase the setback?
Yes.
Make it, okay.
No. Some people are saying, we understand you're considering cutting the setbacks back.
Making
Reducing
them
them even
narrower?
smaller?
Reducing them narrow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can't imagine
It-
any
there-
reason
There's all
why-
kinds of.
Yeah,
reasons.
okay.
Everybody thinks everything there can be. So, but, and if it is actually a fire code requirement, that would be great to establish that, even in the code.
Well, it should be
Yeah.
in that same section if that is a applicable rule, because it.
Yeah, I've never
Right.
seen
Yeah.
it.
Well, if it's a fire code requirement, that would be listed in the building code section that carries all of those other codes, the International Building Code, Residential Code. And that's another thing that's confusing about codes is, it's not always in one place. There's often cross-references throughout the document. And so that's what the reviewers are supposed to be there for. But in some cases, the Westlake Fire Department does our fire code reviews, and the ATS does our building code reviews because they have all of the building code manuals and all of that, the ICC stuff. So it's just with different reviewers, you try to kind of reduce the chance for any kind of, holes in the process.
Is there an argument for just making our setbacks 12.5 feet on both sides so that you don't get into a sort of turf war over who gets the 10-foot setback and who gets the, and that way you're always guaranteeing you have that
That's one-
access.
Right.
Are we sure that it does actually require 25
That's
feet
fine.
between adjacent
We don't know.
lots?
You
Yeah,
have to
I know you
leave.
want to confirm that first.
No, I'm leaving the meeting. No,
What we got? Somebody has got their, need to
We're
mute.
good.
Somebody at home needs to mute.
Okay, we're good.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Sorry.
Yeah, I think we need to figure out whether or not there's a separate fire code provision that has a separate,
Never heard that before.
I've thought that too. I will tell you that the
Address that issue.
Mm-hmm.
the argument that I've heard made
Yeah.
is that it's much prettier if there's some variation on the lots of where the houses are sitting rather than everyone being right in the middle. I also don't know if the driveway is the reason that there's 15, they're allocating 15 on one side is because possibly that's the driveway side.
Mhm.
I'm assuming that was the original intent of 15 on one side and 10 on the other, so you could have a
It's like
driveway.
sloped lots, right? That plays a really big role.
Yeah, that's true. I couldn't have my driveway almost has to be on one side. That's true.
Yeah.
Well, that can be on the list of things to figure out for the future. But I think the bigger question is, are there more
So
comments
can we
about
find,
this?
yeah, so without dropping that.
Sure.
Is there a homework assignment here to find out whether or not there is actually a fire code provision that requires us to do this?
We'll look into that. That's
Would
a
you-
staff,
would you-
that will be a staff homework.
That would be lovely.
Are there other
Inquiring minds want to know.
comments or questions or thinking on the K-Freeze document?
I think we're good.
Do you all want to put it back on the next agenda? I mean, we'll get to that later, but so that there can be further discussion or questions about it?
Would it cost us money to have the K-Freeze reviewer come and talk with us? Okay,
Yeah.
it would.
But that's, okay, we talked about at the last meeting, setting a schedule to bring those experts in. so
Well,
I don't
before we
think-
do that, maybe we ought to have a number of things that we want to talk about.
Yeah, I think that's right.
Yeah.
We need to have a better idea of what our questions are before we start running up a bill.
Are we I don't know if we should introduce the communication first, but are we contemplating creating working groups? Because we keep talking about things that we want to do without any clarity around the roles and who we're planning on doing this.
What I'd like to do is get the staff agenda items covered, and then there are some informational items that people were going to bring, and then I figured we could open it up to more discussion. I'd like to get through it. Hopefully we can. You guys were also going to talk about the Dropbox website, things like that.
Yes, okay, so I'll start with our website. So we do have the CRCRC website up and running. There are a few glitches right now on
What is it?
accessing it. It's just, I'll have to show you how to get there on our
Oh,
webpage,
okay.
because unfortunately, CRCRC and the Comp Plan Strike Force apparently sounded the same to the website folks, so they kind of merged the websites on our page. So depending on where you click, you get to a different
I
page. And
noticed
it's
that.
a little
Okay.
weird right now. So we're working on getting that fixed. But it is available under support for residents. And then if you go over to the comprehensive code can't even say it, Comprehensive Residential Code Review Committee, that link is accurate. And so that takes you to a place where residents can go, click on a link to email the CRCRC. That email address is up and running. As you've all seen over the last week, people have been, when you send an email there, it disperses to all of your email addresses. So very quick way to share information. There's also a link to that Dropbox there. We've already had a few items dropped in by some members, and so it's accessible to the public, but the public cannot drop documents there. So if there's anything you guys want there, just send it over to Desiree or myself, and we'll make sure it makes its way onto the Dropbox. Just a kind of some quick housekeeping on the emails, and I was...
Before we move forward on that, can CRCRC get a notification when new documents are entered into the Dropbox?
We can do that. It will be a manual one, so we'll do our best to remember to share those. We don't always, always remember to do those things, but we'll try to do at least. I'd say maybe depending on how quickly we're getting these documents, maybe check it weekly or something. But we'll try to send out some updates.
You're probably going to cover this next as far as the communications via email, but if we were going to have documents dropped into the Dropbox, it might be useful to just copy everybody that we're doing this, asking you or Desiree that we want to have this document in there, and this document represents such and such. Just a little discussion as to what the item actually is.
Sure.
What do you think?
So there's a little gray area here, and I don't like to be the Open Meetings Act police, but we're just kind of bringing this up for discussion. So anytime there's a full email happening between members of a board at one time, we run the risk of possibly having a violation of the Open Meetings Act. And so we generally are kind of, small bit of advice is to not have individual members emailing the CRCRC email, because then if someone else chimes in about something, before you know it, it can become an open meeting or a violation of the Open Meetings Act. A walking quorum is what they call it. However,
it wouldn't be walking at that point if we were all on it. It would be everybody.
Right, exactly. Yes, but if one person took it off to another email string and is talking about it.
I would argue that by virtue of it being confined to us, as far as the emails go, that it is actually, we have a quorum already.
No, because it's not a noticed meeting.
And the public can't be a
Because
part
it's
of
not
that.
a notice.
Yeah,
Right.
so we can't have deliberations outside of these meetings. A quorum of us cannot have deliberations outside of these meetings.
Right. So we can all talk about our meeting availability and things like that, but when it comes to actual discussions, having those over a meet or an email or chain, or even, having a couple people know about it and they each talk to different people, before you know it, if everyone is kind of apprised of business, then it becomes an issue. And so I think we might have some room to discuss that here. I don't know how either the council or the board would feel, but it has been considered an Open Meetings Act board, so that's what the formation documents of the CRCRC has. That might be open for discussion. I don't know if that's something that the city council will be interested in speaking about, but as of the way it is right now, 3 members is all that could speak on a topic outside of a posted meeting.
In my view, regardless of the legality, the city council has asked us to treat this as a open meeting and commission, and so therefore we should. And so I don't think it's a hard rule to follow, which is just that we don't deliberate outside of the meetings.
I guess, whenever I see the message board, and then I see some of what we're doing, and I'm trying to get my mind around, well, what is the difference here?
So you can have a message board, but we don't have one.
Yes.
Right.
So there are very strict requirements under the Open Meetings Act to have a message board too, and the city council would have to dedicate money to giving us a message board.
And I'm not sure if a message board would even extend to anything other than a city council. There are very strict rules in the Open Meetings Act about the configuration of that board. So it's accessible by the public. So the reason it's different than emails is anyone can log on and look at it. Not anyone can log on and post, but only the council can do that, but the public can come look at it. So it's different than an email group or a text group or, a private Facebook group or something. It's completely accessible. So
2 options that I could think of are working groups, right? Because we can work with the working group, or more meetings, right? Because I can't see a way of doing things. Like, I work collaboratively. I thought the point of this is to collaborate with each other, collaborate with the community. If we're not allowed to do that, then what are we trying to do?
We definitely can collaborate with a non-quorum outside of the meetings. You just can't walk that to the rest of to the group one by one. So, and working groups are perfectly fine. So I think we'll get to that.
Okay.
Any other questions on email address, web page, or Dropbox? I can see your
Well, I
Your
guess
inquisitive
you have
face.
questions that,
Sure.
no, am I comfortable? No.
Well, what-
So it's, so I'm trying to, so, when, we had gotten the note earlier, from Desiree to the CRCRC, email site, that was a copy of an email from someone outside. And then I responded that this is a good note and that I would like to see this information dispersed more broadly, and that maybe we ought to be trying to capture these things and somehow encapsulate. Now, that was back to you and Desiree and to the group here. And I presume everybody got that note. It was effectively a test, because I wanted to know, am I allowed to do that? Am I allowed to do what I did?
No.
And
So
I
it-
guess what I'm hearing right now is yes, I'm not.
well,
I'm
it
not
blurs
allowed.
the line. So
Yeah.
it,
Mhm.
what we can't have is deliberations.
Yes,
Mhm.
I get that.
So
And-
the moment that someone starts responding to you,
Yeah.
then we're having deliberations. And so, and I'm on other commissions, so I mean, I've dealt with this a lot. The best practice is to not have any just emails that are from us to us. And the reason, where it blurs the line is technically you could have written that email to them and then they could have distributed it to us. And so long as nobody goes back and forth, it's probably okay. But from a practice perspective, it's probably best that we not engage in any emails to our group outside.
As a group, but we
That's
can
right.
do it individually.
Absolutely,
Mhm.
so long as it's not a quorum.
Yeah,
Right.
Just wanted to state that.
Right. And it is also, it's easy to unintentionally do it. I'm a reply all most of the time person, so if they email the whole group and you hit reply all, it's just gonna go back to that whole group. And so when we do it, we generally try to email all boards and commissions. We blind copy generally the members, just so that way nobody can inadvertently do it. But when a citizen emails in, it's not generally in the blind copy section, so.
Oh,
You seem frustrated, but.
yes, I
am. What is that rule not allowing you to do that you would like to accomplish?
Well, 10 minutes ago, I said, okay, if somebody puts something in the Dropbox, wouldn't it be nice if, when that person was doing that they sent out a note to everyone saying, I'm putting this thing in the Dropbox, and this is the reason why I'm putting it out there. This is the substance of it, or whatever it is, so that everybody gets notified at the same time that this information is available. You don't have to talk about it or anything, it's just there. Now, otherwise, we need to depend on staff to let us know that somebody put something in the Dropbox, or we have to go and look at it ourselves every day or whatever to see if there's anything that's been added to it. And I'm just trying, from a process perspective, I'm just trying to keep things moving.
We're dependent on staff.
I
We
think
are.
that if you
Staff
email
and
staff, say,
us.
I just put this in the Dropbox, please forward it.
Yeah.
Please send a notice to the CRCRC. I'm sure that wouldn't
Put
be
your
overly
summary.
burdensome request to staff.
All right.
And we'll try to be diligent, especially now that if with community members emailing the group directly, that's already cut down on the amount of emails we're forwarding out. And so, we'll be, if it goes to Desiree and I, one of us will do it within the day. That's
Right.
pretty common. So.
Okay, one last question then, all right? When someone sends us a note to our email site, our collective site, are we allowed to respond to it?
To
You can
them
respond to them.
individually, but not to our group.
So it's not a respond all, it is, okay.
Just make sure you're replying to that individual.
Sometimes
Copy the
I
city
find
staff.
it useful to thank people for sending their note. Now, I'm probably gonna do some of that.
You should.
So, but I don't want to be copying you folks on that thank you note.
That's correct.
Very good.
But you should copy the city staff or forward it to city staff.
Yes.
Because you're responsible to maintain the record,
All
since
right.
it's on your own personal email server.
Okay.
Yeah,
Very
just to
good.
muddy the waters a little bit more too, if we were to get an open records request for any, you know, conversations or any email correspondence, we would only have what's in our servers, and that's pretty easy for us to search. Through our IT firm, they can go through and, you know, automatically do that search. For you guys, that would consider you guys temporary custodians, so you temporarily are holding city records, and then you would have to produce those. And so, anything you copy city staff on, you never have to worry about sending back out in response. So that's just something that might make it helpful for you guys later if there's ever a request.
Okay.
While we're on that topic, Dave, I know you mentioned possibly, you know, forwarding all of these emails to P&Z and City Council. Wanted to get a thought from the group on that. You know, I don't want to blow up anybody else's inbox necessarily with a bunch of different emails. I didn't know how y'all felt about that. Personally, I kind of feel like they, you know, created this group to kind of bring all that information together and present it to them, but just kind of want to get the will of the group on that before we start.
I would like to know from them what they want from us and at what cadence do they want to see, because I thought the emails that we got the last week were really good. If I were them, I'd want to see them, but I don't know. Maybe they want to wait till the end and get the summary from us. I don't know, but it would be a question for them. I'm curious about.
Like I said in my note, I think there are a number of people who do not think that the broader community is really interested in this. And I think too that because we don't get a lot of people showing up at our meetings or our public reviews, that there is that sense that there's just not that much interest. But we're given the number of emails that we're getting, I think there really is. But it still stands out there that folks think, well, there's just a few out there, loud voices, that are expressing their opinion, and it really doesn't represent the community. And I have trouble with that.
I think that we kind of have a duty to at least collect the citizen input, and whether we put it, you know, maybe at least in the last agenda, we did it as the backup to that agenda. Maybe every month going forward, we can put whatever came in within a reasonable time period of the meeting. Between the two meetings, we could just attach as backup. And then if we wanted to, we could, in our final report, attach all of that as backup too.
I think that we need to get to a certain point where, you know, we've gathered the emails and visits that we're going to get, and then I think people kind of respond to a survey, and I think we've
Right.
talked about
Yeah,
that.
I think that has to.
That once we can collect what those questions are we want to ask, and I thought you had some really good ones on your email, because you asked for people to sort of respond in a personal way, like without getting into the nitty-gritty of details, which is hard. But then I think we can also come up with some ideas that we can present, and then I think we might start to get more response.
Yeah.
So
I always think of this this initial request for emails as a helpful to identify what the issues are, and then we can hopefully have a more targeted survey. So, for example, I didn't necessarily know that it does appear to be an issue for a lot of people that the speed limits, they think the speed limits are too high. That would not have occurred to me that was one of the things that people cared about, but that was something that we've seen on a couple of emails now. So now that we know that's an issue, in our survey we could say, would you want to lower the speed limit to
But
25?
that kind of falls outside of our scope, as I view it. I don't think we're really.
I guess
here
we'd
to
have to go
talk
look at the
about-
last one, but
I mean, maybe I
that's
was-
more of an example than to say that we. I mean, I personally would. I think people would be
I
interested in that.
I thought
those
we were
things, but-
mostly focusing on the built environment and not.
I have that question a lot when I read the emails,
Mhm.
is what's within and not within scope.
Yeah.
I saw the lights is a big topic that's been
Mhm.
popping
Mhm.
up.
I think once you throw it out there, then people go, well, yeah, like,
Well, we
or
just-
no.
What we did add it, we did put
Yeah.
in dark sky in our list.
Yeah, and so that's why I think people are
Mhm.
responding, because they're seeing it.
I see.
So,
Totally qualified.
yeah.
Well,
And I consider
having
that part
been
of
on
the built environment.
Yeah,
the
having,
lights on houses.
having been on the last one, I think that there's some room to discover what things people care about. And
Yeah.
that was certainly not one of the things we spent a lot of time on in the last one. I would be shocked if the city council didn't want us to report that, if that is in fact a concern,
Yeah.
that people care about it a great deal.
I just don't want to be the repository of every grief. I'd like to limit our scope to.
I agree. I would recommend a phased approach, because I feel like we spent a lot of time. First it was the height, and then everything around the height, and then it's these other issues like speed limits and light and all these other things.
Mm-hmm.
And to your point, it might not find an end, and you might not get as much done, right? If
Yeah.
you're not trying to be targeted scope, and it's not saying you can't get to those other things, but maybe you do them in sequence.
Yeah.
Well, we're gonna get one survey, so there's no, I mean, if we wanna ask about speed limits, then it's gonna be asked about in the one survey. We can't, we're.
Could that be a question for council if they want to have different phases to this and have a limited scope in the first phase?
The answer is they're gonna want us to come back with what our recommendation
Well,
is.
I don't think that we also want to get into a discussion about what is permissible or not permissible in the park, which, just to bring up other hot button items. Like, I don't think that that is what this panel is about, so.
I guess we can ask, so on the last panel, what we did is we just assumed that if there had already been a comprehensive plan on something, that we didn't touch it. And there had been a comprehensive plan on the park, so we didn't touch it. We just said, we assume this is outside of our scope because you've already done a comprehensive park plan.
Yeah.
But certainly when we get to the point of the survey, if we're gonna have to, as a group, approve what we want to send out in the survey, and if I think that that's something that should be and the group doesn't think it should be, then I'll get outvoted.
Okay. Yeah, okay, sounds good.
Where were we? Okay, so I guess is there anything else on item 6?
No.
Okay, all right, so
Thank you.
we've completed item 3 and 6, and
On
we're.
6, just one question.
Sure.
The emails, do we want to put them in the Dropbox?
All the emails received.
Well, I'm just thinking of the easiest way to organize this for everyone.
I mean, I think that's a good idea. I think probably, speaking for staff, we'd really love if somebody who wanted to compile those would be able to do that. The other consideration, and just something that we try to do to follow public record, kind of protocol, is we generally have to redact personal email addresses. If someone were to come request emails, that's something we'd have to do, is redact those. So when we make those publicly available, that's sometimes what the delay is in us getting those posted, is we have to do that, or we try to do that, given that if somebody were to come request it, we would have to. And so if we're just going to put it out there, we try to do that as well. So that's just one more thing to consider as we share those. So.
Yeah, I think a big consideration is staff time, like what's easiest for y'all.
Mhm. I would just say we may not have the bandwidth to be monitoring all of those emails and redacting them and placing them all in there. But if anybody wanted to take a stab at compiling those for us or something, we would be open to helping with that project. Question?
Not yet.
Okay. Question?
Nope.
I can feel it.
Nope.
Okay.
She's fishing for an answer.
Okay, so let's move on then. There were some items that we had talked about people coming with homework to, and I don't want to, if someone doesn't want to talk about the subject that we had talked about, that's fine, no big deal. And those are 5, prior input from the comprehensive plan strike force, 7, discussion and possible action regarding messaging for requesting citizen input, and I see that 10 was added. I assume that you would like to talk about homework on the Jeff Marks review of residential homes. On 5, Jeff and I had talked about, we hadn't talked about how we were going to split up a presentation today, but we had talked about what was in the comprehensive plan strike force with respect to residential. Jeff, did you have anything in mind? I was going to just walk through briefly the
I have
key
a summary
portions.
here.
Okay, go ahead.
I can just read it off to you guys. I mean, I have a whole visual. It was in the email I sent everyone.
Is it on in the Dropbox?
It's not in the Dropbox. I requested it to be put in the Dropbox. I don't know that it's there.
I think I just saw it there.
It
Is
may
it
be
there
there
now?
as of
Yeah.
today.
Okay,
Yes.
great.
Uh-huh.
Perfect. So it's on the Dropbox. I just didn't get the notification it was on the Dropbox. It's there.
There was no notification.
So what I recommend is folks, if you have a computer, to pull it up, or phone. So it's called 2021 Residential Survey Insights. I can wait for a minute till you have it up. See that Alex has it. So what I did, I went through the survey and I looked for anything that looked at all resembling what we're talking about, and I just pasted it into this Word doc. I didn't add any analysis, but we can look at it together now. So question 15 was about additional shade throughout tree planting, and it seems to be supported. Somewhat or strongly is over 70%. Question 39, encourage additional housing options, apartments, condos, or other non-family single residences, is strongly opposed, is 75%. Apartment complexes, strongly opposed, is 85%. Senior housing, strongly opposed, is 45%. Question 52, increased traffic congestion within Rollingwood residential areas, very concerned, is over 60%. 52, increased traffic, okay, sorry, that was the same one. 4-story homes, strongly opposed, is 65%. Somewhat opposed is about 20%. So supporting 4-story homes is about 15%. So that is pretty relevant to what we've been discussing. The open-ended questions were a little trickier to summarize. So question 63, I did a summary, and I also asked ChatGPT-3 to do a summary. So it was open-ended. What are your thoughts on residential areas in Rollingwood? What do you like, and what would you change? So my summaries were, now this is a summary of all of the responses, so you're going to see some conflicting answers in my summary. But hate builders scraping trees, like the beautiful new homes, preserve the green spaces, too much new construction, stop cutting down trees, protect green belts, homes are getting too big, want ordinances limiting home sizes, appreciate diverse housing, and no changes. So there's a diversity of views in my summary because it's hard to, it's open-ended. I'm not going to read the whole ChatGPT-3 summary here, but it's in there as well. 65 is an ordinance regulating setbacks and other issues posed by combining residential lots for building of larger homes called estate lots. Somewhat support or strongly support is around 65%. So that would be against estate lots, 65%. Ordinance allowing subdivision of residential lots for the building of more smaller homes. Strongly opposed is around 60%. Somewhat opposed is another 15%. 67, an ordinance to make it difficult to upzone property in the future. Strongly support is around 40%. Somewhat support is 20%, so it's around 60%. 68, an ordinance allowing accessory dwelling units or granny flats on a single-family residential home. This is a pretty mixed one. So opposing it, we were about somewhat or strongly opposing around 30%. Supporting it is around 50%. So that's one of the more mixed ones, is whether we want to allow granny flats. 69, an ordinance allowing short-term rentals. This is pretty unifying. Strongly opposed or somewhat opposed is around 70%. So mostly against short-term rentals. And that will conclude my summary.
Can I comment?
Yes.
This is great. On the ones you were just talking about, and I think that the very last question sort of qualifies the one before it, an ordinance allowing accessory dwellings or granny flats. And I think that the reason you get kind of a very balanced set of responses here is because I think sometimes people are viewing it as it's called a dwelling unit as opposed to an accessory structure. And I think that if we were to refer to that more as like a separate structure that's a studio or a workshop or, any number of things that aren't necessarily something that somebody lives in, I think you might get a different set of responses. And what people really don't want are the short-term rentals, according to the next
Short-term
question.
rentals,
Yeah.
ADUs probably.
Yeah,
Mhm.
and I mean, full disclosure, I'm an advocate of accessory units because I think it reduces the mass of the house. And so it allows you to preserve trees and to divide your program
Mhm.
over a site so long as it doesn't get close and impact other neighbors. But I think that in terms of how we use our lots, I think some people are advocates of that, so just
So I'm coming out of the closet. I agree with her.
with me,
Yes.
Oh, okay.
I think it's,
yeah,
it's what we should do in terms of being smart design and sustainable and all the positive things we wanna do.
yeah. Yeah, it can be more expensive.
Should be short-term rental
Yeah.
opportunity,
Yeah,
but, if you need to house a family member, an
Mhm.
aging parent, there's a lot of circumstances out there that make sense for that.
yeah, yeah. So, that
Appreciate the input.
is
Yeah.
something that might, I feel like, fall
I
into
didn't want
our,
you to have to go along.
thank you, I appreciate solidarity.
I'm with you both.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
have a
and that
space
may
in
be
my lot.
something,
My
yeah,
wife
yeah.
is planning for that at some point, so
Yeah.
I guess conflicted view here on
It's
that
good
one.
to have an escape from your family sometimes, just.
I do think it's been mentioned to me before that, and I don't think that it's what's driving the current push of gigantic houses, but it has been explained to me by at least one person's view was that the fact that we can't have a detached accessory dwelling is causing people to have giant houses, because if you wanted to have a wing for a grandparent or something like that,
Mhm.
you can't have it be a separate dwelling at this point,
Right.
a small separate dwelling. You
Right.
actually have to make it attached. I don't know if that's really driving anything, but it was mentioned to me.
It's also
Well-
an incentive to knock the house down, right? Because you'd have to, if you want more, if you have a big lot and a medium-sized house and you want more space, you don't have a choice. You have to just knock it down and start over. Versus if you could build an ADU, maybe you just get more space in the ADU instead.
Mhm. Yeah.
I also took a look at the previous input and have just a few things to add. I probably won't go into all of this, but in evaluating the residential aspects or the comments from our comprehensive plan the first time that relate to residential areas, I thought were at least worth mentioning. The first was the overall vision, which the group agreed to, which was from the citizen input, and that is to preserve Rollingwood's friendly community, neighborly character, natural resources, and high quality of life for current residents and future generations. And I thought that was good because it kind of guides the whole thinking through this, is that there is this sense from the community the first time, and I think we're getting it again, that they do love being here, and they love being here for a reason, and there are things about this place that feel very special and that people are reluctant to not have anymore in the long-term future. Other things that came forward, almost all of the recommendations, or all of the recommendations related to residential were in the future land use section of the previous comprehensive plan. The key takeaways were that Rollingwood residents envision a walkable, tree-filled, connected neighborhood of single-family homes with easy access to local shops and restaurants. Rollingwood residents place great value on the low-density, single-family nature of the residential areas and want to protect the small-town feel of the community. The residents have a great affection for the residential portions of the city and most hope that the residential areas of Rollingwood's future look a lot like the present. We heard that a lot when we said, what do you want the residential areas of Rollingwood to look like in 25 years? A lot of people said we want it to look like what it looks like today, which I think is, again, it's not specific feedback on building height or something like that, but I think it goes to show the general view of the community is that they love what makes Rollingwood special and different now and are afraid of losing it. Residents appreciate low density of single-family homes on larger lots and wish to protect the neighborhood's tree canopy. That was another thing that we got a lot of feedback on, where people were very concerned about the trees. There was concern expressed that older and smaller homes were being replaced by larger new ones, but no widespread desire with respect to any specific rules at that time. And of course, we didn't go into any specifics of building height or anything like that. As Jeff said, residents resoundingly opposed short-term rentals, but there was some support for granny flats or accessory dwellings. There was no consensus, as Jeff said, on estate lots, although there seemed to be an understanding that, and this was, by the way, this was brought to the commission the first time, but not really dealt with, was this idea that some people were buying multiple lots. And in general, no one had a problem with that. One issue is it creates side yards and backyards where you previously had a front yard, depending on where the house is shaped as a lot. So where you previously had maybe backed up to a neighbor's backyard, now you might back up to a side yard, or a backyard might back up to the street rather than a side yard backing up to the street, because currently nobody's backyard generally backs up to the street. So you have all of these different issues, and there was at least some interest in making sure that there were not unintended or unwanted consequences to those estate lots. Storm drainage was it was probably one of the greatest concerns, and I think we're hearing that again in the discussion of impervious cover. Again, I did talk with Jeff about this, but no one else. But I'll share the feedback here is that at least on the last commission, there was generally the feedback of some commissioners that impervious cover did not affect drainage. That impervious cover is a way to reduce the size of a home, but not necessarily a way to combat drainage. The view was that, this is not my view, I'm just expressing it. I feel like I don't understand enough about impervious cover to speak on it. But the view was that given the slope of the lots and the makeup of the ground in Rollingwood, that the vast majority of runoff is going to run off regardless of whether it's pervious or impervious, and that pooling or some kind of or slowing runoff with plants, that those were the ways to affect drainage rather than merely a limit on impervious cover. I'm just communicating that. I don't know enough about it, but it was an interesting issue that it comes up a lot. I do think there is a huge amount of discussion about impervious cover. I do think that there is a huge concern over drainage and stormwater runoff in the community. I personally am terrified every time the city has to shut down the street that they're not going to get there fast enough. I've litigated a case involving one of those, and they're horrible, and there has been a death in Rollingwood it was years ago, but there has been a death here, and I would hate for there to be another of someone who crossed a low water crossing. Residents support looking for creative ways to better connect Rollingwood with the commercial areas, bike paths, bicycles, golf carts. There was a lot of interest, a whole lot of interest in that. In fact, that was one of the things that we kind of discovered through the process, is that people really want to be able to get to safely to get to the commercial areas. The feeling was that the two are very, very disconnected currently. Like you want to be able to walk your kids down to Amy's Ice Cream. That would be an awesome thing. Whereas we don't really have that now. Crosswalks, sidewalks, things like that got brought up a lot. Traffic.
Do we have any purview in that, do you think?
Well, I was
that particular
glancing
thing?
at glancing at the authority document, and there is some vagary. Review the survey results regarding residential and zoning development. Identify residential zoning and development public opinion gaps not addressed by the strike force, and develop a plan for filling in those gaps. I guess it all depends on how broadly you view the topic residential zoning and planning.
Again, I'd like to limit our scope. I think that these are things that have been covered by other committees, and there's different committees formed for, like, looking at City Hall and so forth. So, I mean, when I signed up to focus on residential buildings. So, that's my opinion.
I'm with Alice on that.
Okay.
Me too.
Well,
Not to discount any of that as
No, I
not
mean,
being
well,
necessary or meaningful.
I think that at some point, there will be a process where we put paper to pen on a survey and on a comprehensive plan. And if the view of the group, the majority of the group, is not to deal with residential issues other than building, if there's a group of minority that wants to write on that, then they can do so. It all depends on what the majority of the group says. I personally believe that, as it was sold to me, was we need to go figure out what people want in the residential areas and what the future of Rollingwood would be. And honestly, if it had been only, we want to talk about building heights, I would not have signed up for it. Because that's really P and Z to me, and I have no interest in like copying P and Z. But we don't have to get there yet.
I'm kind of in the middle. I'm interested in both. I just don't think we're gonna get through the pressing issues if we include such a wide scope. I've seen this in my work a lot, where the scope is too big and nothing gets done, and it's really frustrating me there. So this year's my resolution is to make them smaller and actually get stuff over the finish line. So.
In my view, is having served on the last one, I'm fully confident that we can hit more things than just the size of a house. I also don't think that some of those things will take hardly any work. Like if there is a view of 80% of Rollingwood that we would like a 30-mile-an-hour speed limit throughout Rollingwood, or 25, or something like that.
Yeah.
It's one sentence in a comprehensive plan. It does not take a lot of work.
So then
But
another
we don't need to get there today.
Yeah, another option is just in the survey, you have different working groups work on different sections, and we cover the whole scope at the end of the day. I can see that avenue too.
Okay, so I think that is checked unless there's any more discussion on prior public input from the comprehensive plan strike force.
I'd just like to say, relative to your concern about a more comprehensive, broad overview, that if we, as Alex suggesting, focus on the building aspects, the code issues, again, I know we go building height, setbacks, it's gonna be, we're gonna be looking at a lot of things, but all those things are gonna be a major component as to what creates, the neighborhood qualities that you're addressing. We're not gonna get all of them. We may not get into connectivity and, how we make it more, we can on a small scale, but we're not gonna get that overview. But we are gonna hit at things that are from the inside out, are gonna create some of those qualities, and we're gonna be addressing them. But the big picture, that would be overwhelming, I think, for us as a committee. But I don't have a problem, Ryan, if you say, hey, let's throw a sentence in there about speed limit. It's fine.
Well, and I think the discussion about trees is relevant. Trees from the
Sure.
survey, that all pertains to the impacts that a building or a house has,
Well,
and
it's part of the review
quality of the
process.
street, shade is good, and
We
all of
got
those
it.
things, so. I also think that some of the sizes of the houses make it difficult to actually replant trees, because if you're consuming the entire setback with, say, a 2-story volume, and then your neighbor, where are you gonna plant the tree? Where's it gonna grow? Where's its canopy gonna go? So I think that
Can I
that
just,
can impact it.
Alex, I laugh because 15, maybe 20 years ago, we went to the city of Westlake Hills and asked for a variance from landscape ordinance. Because we designed 3 office buildings on West Bank Drive. You can't even see them now. They're so disguised by the tree cover. But we went asking for an exception about, could we do ornamental shrubs or have some substitute for trees, because we designed the footprint of the buildings around saving the maximum number of trees. We had no place to plant trees when it came down to it.
Yeah.
And they gave us the exception, but as the door just about hit us, they said, don't ever come back and ask for that.
Wow.
I was like, oh my God, this is ridiculous. And I mean, seriously, you
Yeah.
drive down West Pike Drive, I dare you look on the east side and see if you might not even notice those office buildings. Little residential, but you can't even see them anymore. They're so, you know,
Yeah,
they're so hidden by the trees.
right.
I think our tree ordinance does need revisited, just the way that it's written, it needs more attention. I don't know that it was fully thought out.
May I say something about trees?
Sure.
Sure. You like them? You and me.
I'm Ellen again, and as far as the trees go, I think there's something in the ordinance where if you cut down some wonderful tree, you have to plant more. My concern is, again, my view and probably others' views, that when you plant a couple of trees that are gonna grow really tall, and it's directly in your line of sight between the city and your house, eventually you have no view. And so I think there's some way to discuss that. I know in some places, if people plant trees and neighbors object, they have to top them. I think that the thing is not to put it right there in the first place. And I don't know whether they'd have to have a neighbor sign off or, you know, how they would do it, you know. But I think when the trees grow up so tall, it really is unfortunate for those of us who bought the house because of the view. Thank you.
Thank you.
Could have to establish some city view corridors.
Yeah. Okay, so the other two topics that people had talked about bringing homework for were topic 7, which was Alex and Jeff talked about proposing a messaging to request citizen input, and then 10 was Jeff's item. Do you guys want to talk? One of you want to talk about those?
Well, I know that we didn't discuss this.
Nope.
Okay,
But
well,
but I will say that I did send out a message to the the ladies of Rollingwood.
Okay.
We have a WhatsApp, and I'm not sure how many people are on there, but I did send out a request for input. So, and I
Great.
asked them to refrain from discussing it on WhatsApp, just send in the email.
I wonder if they would be willing to send it through their email list too.
Yeah.
Because I'm sure that not everyone, I'm sure that
Yeah.
WhatsApp is a subset of
Yeah.
the.
And I think that I want to jump ahead and say that I think a lot of people are reluctant to put their personal opinion in an email because we're all neighbors. And I do think that the survey is really the gold standard because it's anonymous and people can feel comfortable voicing their opinions without, so we need to work
I
on
agree.
it.
So, what about 10? Jeff, do you want to talk about 10?
Just real fast on 7. So one idea that I had, if we want to get more input, was to take work with Ashley, post a summary of the meeting, put it on the website, and then post a link to that on the WhatsApp. I don't know that we're there yet, where we're really looking to generate a lot of activity, but if we wanted to get there, that's something that I think is permitted within the Open Meetings Act.
In my experience of getting people to act, which I've been doing on political work for as long as I've been in Austin, you have to make it incredibly easy for people to act, and you have to make it so that they have to act. They can act within a couple of minutes, and if you make them do homework, they're not going to act. And so whatever I would, my only suggestion is that make it easy for people to.
It would just be a hyperlink.
Yeah.
You click the hyperlink and then you read the summary. Because I've been asked not to communicate about these meetings on the WhatsApp. So that would be a way we can do it in a public forum.
Oh, you
without-
were asked not to do that?
Correct.
Oh.
In talking with the city
Oh.
staff.
Should I not have done that?
Well, I think it's only an issue if you're discussing with a quorum in
That's right.
in a closed group, and so
Okay.
there's probably not a quorum in the women's club WhatsApp group. However, if it's generating a lot of discussion and then the community can't go see it, right? Like I can't log into it or other community members. So I think that's why we just discussed, if you post a link and say, hey, you know, share your feedback via this link, this email, as opposed to just them discussing on the group that's
Yeah.
not a public group.
Well,
I think that helps.
And I did, like I said, make a bold-faced statement saying, please do not discuss this topic here.
Mhm.
So,
I don't
And
think
people
the
did.
issue was, I think as long as you said, please send your, we want your
Mhm.
feedback, but send it somewhere else, there was no violation of anything
yeah,
whatsoever.
yeah.
Well, that is what your note said.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Your note said, send it to this email address.
Right.
And
So
it
I think
looks-
that's
and it looks
completely
like
fine.
looks like we're getting business.
Yeah,
Hopefully.
it's working.
It was a marketing campaign.
Jeff, do you want to talk about 10?
Yeah, so on last week's meeting, we had talked about the size of the home relative to the size of the lot might be what people are after, and specifically like the volume of the home. So, so I was just curious, what data we have on that, because there's nothing in our code that, that's not a tool that we have in our toolkit right now. So I was just wondering if there's a tool that we can create that could be, that way we don't have to use just height or just setbacks as like a sledgehammer that may throw out some things that we don't want to throw out. So, so I talked to the city, and because I know from prior work with the strike force that you can request data from TCAD. So the city actually already had the TCAD data set from January 2023, so they sent me the TCAD data set, which was a really good start. So with that, you get the lot size square footage, as well as the building square footage for the first floor and the building square footage for the home. You don't get any height info. So I said, okay, what about the height info? Do you have that in a data set? The city said, no, you have to manually pull it from the plans. So Nikki was so gracious to pull, I basically calculated the ratio of the building square footage to the lot size. And the top 20 homes, I requested Nikki to pull those plans down, and they're sitting on that computer right there. So if anybody wants to access them, including the public, they can come, schedule a time and come and sit and look through those plans. So Dave and I did that earlier this week, and we're just kind of really just getting started with this. But I think we're getting somewhere. Like Dave was able to pull down the heights for some of those homes, and we were, as expected, the homes that we pulled down plans for were the greatest hits. Like they are all
The Waters buildings. Sorry, I'll say it.
The home that you had brought up earlier happened to be the top of the list. So so I think we're getting somewhere, and I think that this is starting to form something that we can start to use in future conversations.
Well, and I think that the top one is a little bit of an outlier because that's a small lot and it's not a massive house, and so I think the one at the very top is getting kind of flagged unfairly, but starting below that.
And so this isn't intended to call out anyone's home or anyone's house. Like everything that's built is good, right? So I hope that this isn't offensive to anyone if your homes are listed here. It's more of just trying to figure out, it's about the future, right? This isn't about looking backwards. It's about the future of what we want to see moving forward.
I put a document in the Dropbox here the other day, and it is a 2007 report from the City of Los Angeles that has to do with what they call the mansionization of Los Angeles. And it really is talking about much of what we're saying right here is the volume of a house relative to its lot size and how it's disproportional. It's disproportionately felt, particularly because the setback lines across all of LA are the same, regardless of the lot size, as they are here. So whenever you take a large house and you put it onto a small lot with the setback line that is the same as a small house on a large lot, you see a huge difference. If you put a large house right on the setback lines on a large lot, it is overwhelming. So what they were trying to do is figure out what the best way to manage this thing is. It's a really good discussion by a group of people who thought about it a lot. And I just invite you to look at it whenever you have a couple of minutes to read 20 pages of planning group pros. And evidently, and I wish I had access to this, I looked up the word mansionization, and there is a Wikipedia entry for it. And they talk specifically about Los Angeles pretty much. Seems like it is an LA word. Evidently, Bloomberg had done a report on this very thing back around 2012 or so. I don't have access to Bloomberg documents. If anybody on this group does, I would love to be able to read this report. Anybody subscribe to Bloomberg? No. The city doesn't subscribe to Bloomberg, do they? No. Okay. Yeah, I tried lots of ways to get in, and I don't want to pay the $150. So, okay.
Anything else on 10?
That's all I have.
Okay, so the additional, some of the rest is more administrative than substantive. I put on number 4 just in case there was any desired substantive discussions, but we certainly don't have to hit it unless there is something that somebody wants to specifically talk about.
On number 4, you're saying?
Right, I put that on there
Yeah.
in the event that someone wanted to bring up a specific item like height or
I have a thought.
or anything.
Yeah.
I have a thought,
Sure.
and it is, you know, before our last meeting, I spent some time with Nikki, asking her what she would like to see with regard to the work that we're doing and how it might impact the code. And in just kind of a general discussion as to where she sees some of the problems. And her number 1 response was that we talk about what we think we want to see, but we don't talk about so much about what we don't want to see. And it might be useful for us to just brainstorm a list of things that we know that are out there that are bothering either us personally or people we've been talking with, and just say, okay, what are these things? So that we know, at least kind of pointing in the direction of what it is we're trying to get to. Also, I think that Nikki was implying that they might be able to help, staff might be able to actually help solve these problems if they know what it is that we don't really like. So,
I think that's a
Recent
great
emails been
start.
pretty good about that. Got some really good emails about that.
yeah,
over the last week.
yeah.
All right, let's move to,
That's
Well, I thought we might.
go ahead.
I thought that was a great starting point. I think we do need to get to the point where we're kind of listing what are the things that we're most concerned about. I'll start 45-foot tall walls. You know, I think that's where we come up with a situation.
Can we generate a
where-
list this
Yeah.
evening? At least
Yeah.
a starter point?
What if we went around the room and expressed our hot buttons?
Yeah, might be
I
good.
mean,
We probably
that way
all
we
share
could
some
get
of the same
personal
ones.
And we could get it out there.
Okay. Why don't you start?
I would feel better.
Okay, let's talk about building height. I'm okay with the building height the way it reads. I want it cleared up in terms of where the datum is on the high side and where it is on the low side. If you want to increase the height exception to greater than 10 feet, so it's a harder thing to meet, I wouldn't have trouble with that. But I'm okay with the building height like it is. I just want it to be determinable for people. I've never had trouble with it, but I guess the codes are a little bit conflicting. And so that's my statement on that. Impervious coverage, again, I know I'm repetitive, but I think the drainage ordinance, and again, when I say the drainage ordinance, do we all understand the intent and what the real concept behind the drainage ordinance is? And, you know, I think our community needs to understand that, because that's a provision to sort of help control impervious coverage, though it doesn't put a limit, okay? You know, and I'm gonna express my understanding of it is, hey, if I have a vacant lot and it's discharging so much water, well, guess what? When I finish construction, it better be equal or less than what that amount was. Or if it's an existing house and you tear it down, it better be equal to or less than what it was with that house previously. And, you know, I mean, again, everybody can come down to my house. I have 3 detention ponds. They work fantastic. I'm covering 22 acres above me that come and, you know, drain across my property. So, and again, I don't think I have an excess, I don't know what my impervious coverage number is. I don't think it's super excessive, except that, hey, we wanted a 1-story house, a generational house that we could live out for the long term. So we are kind of covering more, you know, we got a more impervious coverage than maybe if we'd had a 2-story house, all right? The tree ordinance, Dave, I'd be good taking a harder look at that, okay? I mean, again, you know, maybe I'm stupid, but we try to design houses around the trees so we save as many as possible. Now, I say that, hey, on my particular lot, I had a bunch of crappy trees and I had a bunch of oak willow. So I had to deal with all that, so we didn't save as many trees as maybe I'd like, but I got one beautiful tree out there that it's good.
I want to just comment, because you made me think of something on the impervious cover. If you are building a 1-story home, maybe there are some exceptions to the impervious cover rule, because
Yeah.
you're keeping the volume of the house down, is provided you meet the drainage requirements.
And so, on that order, I think, you know, I hate to mention, oh God, the city of Westlake. Westlake had some incentives in their ordinances, and maybe we consider some of those, which would be in that vein that, hey, if you're doing a 1-story house, maybe you get a little bonus here or there, or you get an exception or some incentive.
And there's a lot of homes in Rollingwood that I call kind of a 1+, where they have a garage down and the house up. I mean, they've been building them in the past and they're still building them now, and that to me is still a 1-story. Like, it's not really a 2-story per se. It's kind of partially submerged.
Been there, done that. So, setbacks. I'm good with the setbacks the way they are. You know, I do like, however we interpret it, that, you know, between adjacent houses, there's 25 feet, you know. Now, again, there's that business that Alex mentioned of jockeying for who gets the 10 and who gets the 15. It is what it is. I mean, I've had to deal with that before. You know, FAR. I think looking at a floor area ratio, again, I don't know exactly how to cover volume, okay? I think the building height ought to kind of deal with some of the volume issues, but if you look at living area or whatever you want to define as the built square footage, and that in relationship to the lot size would come up with a reasonable FAR percentage. And that ought, you know, that ought to get us where we can provide people to kind of meet market standards, so they don't have to do a 2,000 square foot house, but they can have their 5,000 square feet and do it in a nice and appropriate way. There might be a few other hot buttons, but I got it off my chest.
Thank you for that.
We just
Oh,
gonna
wait a
go-
minute, you know, again, hey, I'd love to legislate that we wouldn't have any spec homes. That's not gonna happen. That's not gonna happen, but, you know, it's kinda like, maybe a terrible example, but, you know, financial advisors have to be fiduciaries. I wish there was a way we could put some kind of philosophical requirement on our architects to, you know, kind of practice what they learned in school, maybe, or I hate to say that, but that, you know, Alex knows exactly, what I'm saying and feeling, and, you know, that you take a holistic approach to design and think about neighbors and think about, you know, the ecology, think about the slope, think about the access, think about utilities, think about the neighbors, think about the views, think about the breezes, the sun angles, yada, yada, yada. And, you know, we just got people out there designing with their eyes closed. And so I don't, again, how we legislate that, I don't ever know. But I wish we could have a philosophical challenge in our efforts to step up the quality of design.
Well said.
Yeah, it's coming from an architect, so that was, you know, I was biased.
Skip me, go ahead.
Okay, I think that with regard to the building height, I think that it should be measured from any point around the grade, existing grade and finished grade, to yield a 35-foot height and no more. And I know that there are steeply sloping lots. I think you can still build 35 feet at the high end, and you can build 35 feet at the low end, but you can't create a monster that consumes all of the airspace.
I could do it.
I mean, I think it's possible, but I think that the 45-foot option is a real problem. I also don't think we've talked about foundation height, and I realize that, you know, the foundation is consumed within the allowable height, but I think we're coming up with some examples where foundations are disproportionate to the streetscape, and maybe existing homes that were there, and it's elevating the houses in a way to make them out of scale with everybody else on the street. And I had some images I was going to share because I liked Dave's photo show last time, but actually it's your house from, and the houses around you from Timberline looking east at Timberline Ridge. There's a series, they're all new houses, and they very gently follow the topography as it goes down. You know, the entrance is just barely above grade. And, you know, these aren't necessarily small houses or, you know, huge houses. It's just, it's an example of what you're describing, Duke, where people are paying attention to all of the elements around them. And so I don't know how we can manage that, but it's just something that I've noticed that has started and feels out of scale, out of character with our neighborhood. So really those were my
Couldn't we stipulate something that makes a requirement for how much exposed slab or how much out of grade?
I think from the street, because I think there are a number of homes where it drops away from behind, and if that doesn't impact your neighbor, then it doesn't matter. But I think that the street is communal space, and it just feels like there should be some responsibility for preserving that to some degree. You know, you can have a terrace, I would think, that is maybe a certain height, but don't then build your house on that same line necessarily. It's, anyway, I'm done.
Okay, I think one of the things I would like is us to consider how, I think that even with that letter that we had gotten today or yesterday, that we're lighting our places up, we're lighting our lights too much.
Mm-hmm.
And
yeah.
I think that we have the opportunity here to kind of serve as a model for other areas in this part of the world, that, you know, we can have a lesser light pollution at night. We can light up our lots as much as we want, as long as we're focused downward instead of upward.
Mm-hmm. Or shield the bulb.
Right, shield the
it's
bulbs,
not,
yeah. But anyway, something to have to do with trying to mitigate the light pollution that we that's everywhere in this place.
There are a lot of nearby communities that actually do have dark sky,
Well, it's,
like,
I'd like to have dark sky too.
yeah.
I think that I would like to see our tree ordinance address the issue of fire safety. I am concerned that overplanting is not a good thing necessarily for Rolling Wood. I don't really believe that it's an overhang to overhang kind of thing where fire spreads. I think it's a tree canopy to tree canopy thing that makes fire spread. And I believe that if there's a big fire, what's happening in California in the past couple of years, we're headed in that same direction. And I don't think that our tree ordinance even recognizes the possibility. And so I think plenty of trees is the right idea, but it needs to be managed. Planting needs to be managed properly. That's my issue. I don't want trees touching each other, bad thing. The number of stories that are allowed here in Rolling Wood is kind of an unknown. We haven't really talked about that so much, but part of the mass of these houses is managed is because of a structure being a 4-story unit next to a 2-story unit or a 1-story unit, and it's just the whole notion of having a 4-story house here in Rolling Wood. To me, it doesn't make any sense. I think we ought to manage that downward somehow. It shouldn't be more than 3. It probably shouldn't be more than 2 or 2.5. I would also, what I really can't stand and I find offensive are these giant houses that are being built all the way to their maximum allowable height and being squared at the top. And I think that we can change the ordinances such to incentivize folks so that we have a kinder roof line, we have maybe a gentler slope across the lot, but that the overall size or feel of the house needs to be taken into account. It can't be just a box for so that it can be as big as it can be. And I think there are a number of ways to do that. I know I've been working on this stuff for a long time, but the more I think about it, the more I drive around Rolling Wood, and the more I see what's going to be built or what's being built right now, the more pissed off I get about it. It's just like, well, we're not getting there. There's some big boxes got there being built, and they're going to outrun us.
How can we address that? Maybe that's not what we're doing right now. Maybe we're just giving our list. But I do feel like we're getting long 2- and 3-story walls that become your neighbor's movie screen.
Yeah.
How can you?
I agree with you. I
Yeah.
think that no more than 35 feet anywhere.
But even I think
Should
a
be.
35-foot
Yeah.
wall
Yeah.
running down the setback
Yeah.
is I would be very disappointed if that were next to me. And I don't think that is responsible, neighborly, I think it's
I
Well,
like measuring to the top story, right?
Yeah.
Not the roof line, but the top,
Yeah, and
top
then-
window.
and running the length,
yeah.
just
You
flat
can
facade.
inject,
Yeah.
again, the McMansion ordinance in the city of Austin injects articulation and height variation.
Yeah, I think that's,
Yeah.
Sidewalk, or essentially what would be a sidewalk,
yeah.
Side property line running so many feet, you gotta offset, you gotta change or variegate the
I-
height.
I
And
feel
there's-
strongly that, yeah.
Well,
You have to do
a
that.
way
Yeah.
could be to reduce the maximum number of feet and then incentivize folks to have a sloped roof, which will allow them to go over a 30-foot max, but only if it's on a slope. That's a way.
Yeah.
Ashley, do we have till 5:45 or till 6?
Yeah. Okay. All right,
Okay.
I'm sorry.
No, that's okay.
Just one more
I just
thing,
wanted to make sure
and
we
that
get through
is,
everything. There's no
meeting
the
following you guys
way
today,
that
so.
slopes get built up in different lots so that a house sits on top of a hill, as opposed to trying to grade it towards the street.
Okay.
We're seeing too many houses that are built up higher. And I don't really know how to legislate that or make rules around it, but It doesn't look right. Doesn't fit the neighborhood. That's all I got.
I'll go last. I like how Ryan put it, the goal of trying to be a mirror, reflect the community. So I'm open to changing my view after we do the survey. But looking at the last survey on the height, 80% oppose 4-story homes. So, it's what everyone is talking about is there. And if our current height ordinance allows 4-story homes, I think looking at the height ordinance is a good starting point. But I wouldn't use that as the only way to adjust, because I think the other issue folks have is the building size relative to the lots. So I don't think you want to go too extreme with height, because someone could be on a sloped lot and then they end up in like a single-story house if you're just using height as your one focal point. Impervious cover. This is personal for me. So we built a custom home. We didn't know anything about what we were doing, and we hired an Austin builder. And the Austin builder, the person who sold us the home already had plans, drainage plans already done for the house that they were going to build. And so we bought it from a spec builder, and they already had drainage plans done. So to save time and money, we just took on that civil engineer. The civil engineer didn't want to go through TCQ review, so they forced us to keep our home below 20% for impervious cover. Like, they weren't going to allow us to go above 20%. I just thought that was the rule. Like, I thought they convinced us, because I'm ignorant, I don't know the process. So I was convinced that TCQ is impossible to get through, and your home can't be bigger than 20%. So so when you go to the spreadsheet, my home's like at the very, very bottom of that, because like we're literally at 20% for our home, which is fine. We didn't want to go much bigger than that anyway. It wasn't a big deal for us, but I don't like using impervious cover to limit home size. I like it to cover drainage. I think we should focus on drainage, and I think we should focus on home size. I don't like mixing the two, right? Because then you just incentivize the people who know how to work the system and work the process. They get what they want, but the rest of the folks don't get what they're looking for, because they don't know the ins and outs of the system. So that's just my own personal view there. Regarding the trees, I think climate change is there's a little bit of nuance there. I've read that the water is changing in different parts of the country. The west is getting drier, the east is getting wetter, and then Austin's actually an area that is getting wetter. So I don't know that I can say definitively what's happening in California is going to happen here. So I think further studies of that is necessary. And I do like the greenery here. I do like trees and setbacks. I totally understand folks want to do whatever they want to do with their lot. Totally understand that. But why are you removing trees and setbacks? Right? Like, that to me is like an obvious thing. I see some of the newer homes scrapes the trees in the front yard, and the only thing I can imagine is they want to see their house because they think their house is beautiful. The house's beauty is subjective. Not all of us want to see your house. Some folks like seeing the trees and not your house. So I think we should consider that, like finding the balance of, because I think not everyone's going to love what we come out with. We're trying to make everyone as happy as we can, right? So that's like an easy way to play both sides. Let someone have the big house but keep the trees, or have them plant more trees. Or if you're going to put a really big house up, maybe, if you're a spec builder putting up a $10 million home, you've got $100,000 in your budget to put up some trees in the setbacks. Even if the ordinance isn't requiring it, like why could you put so much money in the home? You've got a huge profit margin. You can't just put some trees in for the community. It feels like we should be able to find some nuance there. I think and then lights weren't on the survey last time. I think that's becoming a bigger issue, because that's like just following the modern building trends. I've noticed that with the newer homes, that's just part of the deal. Folks want to light up their landscaping at night, and I don't think that was really even talked about or thought about at the last survey. So I'm definitely curious what the neighborhood thinks about lights. I personally don't like them. I don't have mine lit up, but a lot of my neighbors do, so I might be the minority there, and I would respect it if the community wants lights. I would respect that. I personally don't like it.
I think there should maybe be a time limit. For us, the lights, well, I don't want to talk about me, but the lights can shine in while people are trying to sleep. And that, I think that at some point, you know, the lights need to go off at like 11 or something. Maybe, you know, I know some people like security lights and certainly porch lights or dim lights or shielded lights or something, but the roof lights, stop.
Are you referring to landscaping lights?
I'm
That's a
ref-
big trend in my neighborhood.
Yeah, I think there's landscape, but there's a lot of houses that have a lot of exterior lights. There's sort of accent lights that aren't shielded bulbs, and that those can shine directly into your
someone
house.
else's window. Got
Yeah,
it.
yeah. So if it's shielded, then it's either going up or down, and it's not being broadcast into your home, so.
I went last on purpose. One is because I wanted to hear everything, but also because I think that I don't come in with a strong set of opinions on it. And I do think it's our duty to go figure out what the community really wants and try to, as best we can, at least for the moment, put our personal things that we're most fired up about at least on pause until we feel like we have a good reflection of what the community wants. But some of the things were stated what I continue to hear, and I think even from there's going to be a portion of our community who just simply doesn't want any government regulation, and so they're just going to be against anything. But I think that even among the people on the least government regulation side, even among that group, that there are people who believe that some of the homes have just gone too far. And I think we all know which homes those are. And I think it is, as Dave, I think, has talked about, it's basically going setback to setback as high as you can and making a flat roofs so that you get the absolute maximum volume of airspace within a home. And when you do that, it looks like an apartment building. I mean, that's what some of the people who I've talked to said. When you drive around, some of these houses don't look like houses anymore. They look like buildings. They look like offices. And that does, I think, significantly harm the character of the neighborhood, because I think it's one thing to say, I don't want to be told what to do. It's another thing to say, to be able to answer the question, I wouldn't mind living next to that house. And I think most people with some of the houses that we know about would say, I wouldn't want to buy the house next to that. I wouldn't want that going up next to me. It would change my quality of life if that went up next to me. I think a lot of the things we're talking about are very, very difficult to legislate, and I think that would probably get an enormous amount of pushback if we go too far. I think we have to be cautious, figure out what the community wants, and then be, I think, modest in what it is that we ultimately propose. But the last thing on and I also went last because I thought this list that we came up with could serve the next discussion, which is the subcommittee assignments, if this group feels ready to tackle that issue. Does anybody feel ready to tackle that issue?
Yes.
The remaining items on the agenda are to schedule a public workshop, which I continue to feel like their general consensus has been that we may not be ready for that yet, or it's a little too early for that. You reacted, so do you disagree with that?
Well, I'm just wondering, what do we expect to get out of it?
I think nothing yet, right? Because we're not.
Well, okay.
We haven't gotten the survey out. So
Okay.
here's what I think.
Okay.
I think the survey needs to go out.
Okay.
We need to spend a lot of time coming up
Alright.
with a proposal of
Okay.
a way to meet, to reflect what the community wants, and then we need to ask for, this is what I think.
Okay.
And then we need to ask for.
And the reason I wanted this agenda item on there is because last meeting, I thought that we had decided as a committee that we're not gonna do anything until we have a public forum. And we give people an opportunity to express their ideas or whatever, and I'm thinking, golly, we're not gonna get anything. And it's probably not gonna change what we know already, but doggone it, if that's what we gotta do, let's get it done. Let's hurry up and get something out there, okay? If that's what we've all decided, let's do it quickly.
Okay, well, maybe we should just talk about that then. My proposal on public workshop would be that we pause on any public workshop until after we've had a survey that goes out, and we do work to try to put together a reflection of that survey.
I'm with you.
Okay,
Should we
So-
make a motion?
That's my motion. With respect to a public workshop, that we wait until after the survey and after we've come up with some, at least, proposal.
Yeah.
And are we wrapped up on that?
I guess, should there be a vote? There was a
We would
motion and
need
a second.
Second was Dave.
Yeah,
Second.
all those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so that's unanimous.
Wonderful.
Uh,
Thank you.
So the next things were future meetings and subcommittee assignments.
I wanted to ask about the subcommittee assignments. Okay, assuming I don't know how many topics we would take and how many people per that, but would we then come back and say, this is our recommendation, and debate it, and goes to council? Like, where's our end game?
So the last commission, I think, did honestly, I mean, I think the end product is awesome. I think that anybody who reads it, the people that didn't read it often complain about it, and most people who read it say, oh, that makes a lot of sense, I really like it.
Mhm.
And so, and that process worked by not too early having proposals, but like getting a lot of feedback, getting getting the survey out. In fact, we had 2 surveys that went out, discussing the results of those surveys, and then we had groups that went to talk about various aspects. And this is, I think, a little bit harder in a sense, but once we can kind of figure out what it is that the community wants us to do, to work on, then have some we had subcommittees assigned early, but they really didn't do anything until later, other than the survey subcommittee. The survey subcommittee, which was Jeff and I, worked really hard, really early to come up with a survey, present it to the group approved it, then it went to council, and then council approved it and sent it out. I think that's the thing that needs to happen the fastest. But I'm happy to if you feel like you're ready to have a subcommittee on building height and you just want to work on that or any other thing, then that's fine too. I know that Jeff really wanted to get working on subcommittees too, so you guys speak to it.
I was just a little bit confused last time because I was asked to start talking about building height, and I thought that, okay, that means that we must be starting to work on building height. And then it looked like that's not what we're gonna start working on. We're actually gonna start working on having a public forum, or maybe we're gonna have a survey or something like that. This is our 3rd meeting, and I'm pleased to say that I think that we're actually getting product out of it, but I don't believe we have any product prior to here. And I would really like to get something happening. I don't care what it is.
Yeah.
And just so you know, I mean, I feel like we're not operating too slowly. I know it's annoying because you've been working on these things for a year and we haven't, or I haven't.
Okay.
I can only speak to myself. But in my opinion, having the community buy into it requires us to do a lot of work up front of talking to and listening to the community. And that if we rush to some solution, then we're going to get more pushback later of, well, you rushed to a solution before you even asked us what we wanted.
Then maybe we could have established a survey subcommittee last meeting.
Yeah.
That
Well, we
would've
can
been-
now, right?
Yes.
It's on the agenda.
Yes.
But at the same time, if we had sort of an assignment, that sounds terrible. If we had an assignment of what we're interested in, I mean, look, Ryan's already got a good feel for FAR information and that sort of stuff. I mean, couldn't we kind of have those assignments and be gathering information that's not conclusive, but it's gonna help frame our decision-making, and it's gonna help us filter through the survey information as well.
I 100% agree with that because, and I think that the benefit of a subcommittee now, today, in addition to
And Dave will be happy.
in addition to making Dave happy, in addition to a survey, which I still actually think we might personally think we're not be ready for a survey, but it really helps if somebody can become an expert in something, because then we don't always all have to be an expert in everything. And so, for example, if I just wanted to take on lighting, I could go look up, 20 other cities' lighting rules, and at least come to the table next time with this is the kind of things that other communities are doing.
And we did that actually in planning and zoning.
Yeah.
Because the Girl Scouts brought it to our attention. They asked us to consider a dark sky ordinance.
So you
And they
might be the
noted our
expert on that one
flagpole
already.
was not compliant at the time. So yeah, I actually, that was something that I spent a bunch of time looking
Yeah,
at.
so there's no
and-
reason for,
Yeah,
for
yeah, yeah.
others to
That
become
makes
an
sense.
expert in
Yeah,
that area too.
yeah.
And so I guess, what might help is the list that we kind of came up with of people, of things that are irritating to people, if that becomes something that people at least, if there's any one of those topics that someone is like, I really am very interested in this and I would like to become the expert in this, that would be helpful.
Could we, I've been tracking.
We have 2 minutes, by the way.
List items throughout, so could we also list all of the ones that we've discussed? Impact of non-conforming homes, review of enforcement, and then just a whole bunch of research on other codes. Yep, those are two I wanna add to what we discussed earlier.
It's gonna be impossible to do this in 1 minute.
Yeah.
I think that we should put subcommittee assignments back on the next agenda, and everyone should come with 2 or 3 topics that you would like to be, and multiple
Why
people
don't
can
you-
be
Why
assigned
don't we
the
just
same
do
ones.
it now? Like, somebody say 2 things you wanna do, maybe.
If you'd like,
I
sure.
don't wanna-
We have another agenda item, but we can,
Okay, I don't wanna interrupt, never mind.
I mean, if you
keep
think
it-
we can
keep
get it
going.
done in 60 seconds.
No, I want
Let's
you
do
to,
it next time, you're good.
I think it
Okay,
makes
that's
sense
good.
for people to come with the thing. I can't even answer the question right now, to be
Okay,
honest with you,
sounds
of
good.
what I want,
I'm
what I would
impatient.
want to. The other, so that's what my proposal is for regarding subcommittee assignments, is that everyone come
Can we
next
stagger
meeting.
survey after, cause I feel like everything else is gonna drive the survey.
Yeah, we don't have to have a survey yet. I mean,
Yeah.
I will say that I don't think that each separate subcommittee should do its own survey questions, maybe propose the topics, because the survey needs to be somewhat uniform in the way that it asks questions. And like, I spent a lot of time last time learning how to ask survey questions. So like, that would be something I would be very comfortable being on the survey committee, because it was important to me to learn how to ask questions.
Why don't we do that then? Why don't we at least establish a survey committee, at the very least?
That's fine. Does anybody else want to be on the survey committee? I'm happy to be on the survey committee. If not, that's okay. I will
I'll
take
be
it
on
on.
pretty much every committee there is, but,
Yeah.
I'm happy to
but-
take it on.
Yeah.
For now, how about I will,
Yeah, I'm gonna be gone for the next 3 weeks, but
it's not gonna be done in 3 weeks, so.
leave,
We
leave
can do-
something for me.
We can do 3, right? Half of us, so I'm happy to work with you two on that.
Good,
Okay,
good.
all right, so
That'd be great.
Ryan, Jeff, and
great.
Dave
Okay.
will be on the survey.
Good.
Okay, the last question left, and we are out of time now, is, I just wanna mention this, we don't have to decide it, but I think it'd be helpful both for the group and for the public, and staff doesn't probably want this idea, but I think it'd be good to have some at 4 and some at 6, or maybe we can make it all at 5, whatever it is, because I don't wanna be the person responsible for making everybody to come at 6, if that's bad for some people. 4 is bad for me, but I'll be here. So, is that all right, that sometimes we meet at 4, sometimes we meet at 6, or would everybody not like to have that and just want to be the same time every time?
I'm flexible.
I'm flexible.
Earlier's better for me, so whenever.
4 is sometimes tough, 5 would be better, but generally, it's okay. It's
5
not-
is much better for, I mean,
Yeah.
I have to leave work every
Yeah.
time to do this,
Yeah.
and it's costly for me, but I will, do you wanna just set it at 5?
5
Is
is
that
good.
a reasonable compromise?
Sure.
Okay, so in the future, we'll do 5, and we'll get with you guys on what days that would be best, and
Sure. I think we had reached out earlier about, Mondays are kind of weird 'cause sometimes we have core, other days are kind of taken up. Tuesdays are pretty open with the exception of the first Tuesday of the month. So I think we had circulated to the group the second and fourth Tuesday being kind of the going schedule that would keep some consistency.
is 5 o'clock on those days available?
It is, yeah. Those have no nighttime meetings at all.
That sounds great.
So,
So Tuesdays, second and fourth Tuesday at 5.
right.
Generally going forward. Awesome.
That would actually make our next meeting next week, so I don't know if y'all wanted to push to this following, so that would be Tuesday, May 23rd. And then from there, it would go second and fourth
I
every.
mean, we can go next week if people want to, if we're ready to keep pushing.
I think so.
We just need to
Uh,
decide real fast because we've made staff past
Let me
the
confirm
time.
too that that's available, just go.
Sorry,
Add it on.
the 9th, are we talking about?
It
I
would,
can't do next Tuesday at 5.
yeah, that would be the,
No, I can't do it either.
okay, so
My
let's go to the
husband-
23rd.
23rd,
Yeah,
okay.
Well,
5
that's
o'clock.
3 weeks.
it is, because we had said we were gonna do the
Right, it would be the
second and fourth.
Just
Because the
because
first
the
Tuesday
first
is unavailable.
Mm-hmm.
Subcommittees could help, because we have 3 weeks now between meetings, so.
Is
Back
there-
to Alex's recommendation, if we just throw something against the wall, at least we can get started on
Yeah,
stuff.
or can we, like, I'll text Dave and say, Dave, I'm thinking of these committees, and Dave texts Jeff.
No,
and-
you can't, that's a
No, that's
rolling
a lot.
quorum.
Oh.
You can't do that.
Can we stay for 5 more minutes
Y'all
to
could
figure
text,
this out?
or y'all could email staff, you could email me and Desiree
Oh,
and
that's a
say,
good
I'm very
idea.
interested in, you know, these few topics, and we'd be
That's-
happy to disperse the topics you would like to further discuss with the
Why not-
subcommittee.
Why don't we
Why not-
have a spreadsheet with all the items on
Sign
it and our
up.
names across it, and then we
How
can
about-
put X's
how
in the
about this?
boxes?
How
Good
about
idea.
if somebody can make a did you make a list of the items or can somebody make a list of the things we talked about?
I do have generally some from those, I know, Tom had kind of an idea of a few groups of subcommittees, so maybe I can
It
work with
might be
him
good,
and you.
like you could work with Tom
Sure,
to
Okay, I
put
can do
together a
that.
list and I don't think it's doing business to just organize like
right, if it's housekeeping, and if it
Yeah.
goes through us and y'all aren't, you know, back and forth, if you reach
Deliberating.
out to us and we
Yeah.
say, hey, you both said you like this subcommittee, here you go,
Can
y'all,
we make
you know,
this
y'all work
super
together.
informal? Can we just say between now and the next meeting, does anybody wanna work on this with me? And then we can talk about it over the next 3 weeks,
That'd be
'cause,
great.
as long as it's not public, yes. It's not deliberating and on the list for all of us.
like, does anybody wanna look into enforcement or non-conforming impact? I feel like non-conforming is a big one, cause if non-conforming is an issue, then a lot of this stuff is gonna have to change.
I think we need to wrap up
Okay,
for staff.
sounds good.
Is there a motion to adjourn?
Yes, I make that motion.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All those in favor?
I.
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, we're adjourned.
Thank y'all.
Sorry for
Thank you.
making you stay late.